What's up, you amazing people? I hope you're having a fantastic day. You are, of course, watching and listening to the Daily Dirty 30, also known as the DDT, here on The Kevin Lee Show. And I am your host, Kevin Lee. Now, for those of you who do not know what the DDT is all about, let me take a moment to explain. You see, it's a show that airs live at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, Monday through Friday, and it's where I get to spend 30 minutes telling you, the viewer, all about the things that bother me today. What do I get out of it? That's easy. It's therapeutic. Why should you tune in? That's even easier. It's entertaining. Sound like a fair trade? Good. Let's get to it. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Daily Dirty 30 here on the Kevin Lee Show. Sorry, my background's all askewed, and it kind of threw me off. Apparently, I got to get that fixed. Anyways, I hope everyone's having a happy Thursday. I know I am. I barely made it here, event time. Even though I'm maybe a minute or two late, I apologize. I was doing some testing for some coming up shows, and things got plugged and unplugged, and then all of a sudden I had to plug things back in, and before you know it, things are crazy, but they're back to normal, I think. Should be able to hear me, should be able to see me. We will find out short enough. If you are watching and you do notice that you're not hearing something like a video play or something, let me know. Don't think it'll be an issue, but you can never be too certain. Anyways, like I said, you are watching the Daily Dirty 30 here on the Kevin Lee Show. This is a show that airs every Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And of course, I am your host, Kevin. And today we are going to be discussing mailing it in. I couldn't help but want to talk about this one. I heard an interview that occurred between the Attorney General, Bill Barr, and Wolf Blitzer. And it really just got me going. It got me thinking. It got me motivated. It got me to the point where I'm like, hey, we need to talk about this. And by we, I mean me. And you need to listen because there are some pretty crazy and fantastic things that are said in this very short snippet of an interview that we're going to watch. Again, the reason why we're talking about this is because people still to this day, and it doesn't make a difference if you're on the left or if you're on the right, people have a tendency of not really understanding what the whole mail-in issue is. Now, some people are like, well, mail-in issue, there is no issue. If you're on the left, you're thinking and believing that, hey, this is absolutely perfect. Nothing wrong with this. This is the way we should be doing it. And many people on the right, without even knowing what they're talking about, saying, absolutely not. We cannot have mail-in balloting. That is insane. You're both wrong. And the reason why is this. So when they're talking and discussing on the news and between, White House administration officials and all these things about mail-in balloting, what they are discussing is this: blanket mass mail-in balloting to every single registered voter on the voter rolls, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but trust me, it is. And we'll see why in just a minute. Now, there's a confusion because when you think of mail-in balloting, you're like, well, they do absentee ballots. That should be no problem. And absentee ballots aren't a problem. In fact, and even in many states like Illinois, where I live, because that's what I'm going to use for an example, because that's what I know and I can prove it. They have mail-in balloting, which is similar to absentee ballots, which means that you, the individual, you, the citizen, you, the concerned adult who wants to cast their vote, if you want to vote by mail, you actually have to contact them and say, hey, I want to vote by mail. And then you have to, prove who you are, basically sign an electronic contract saying this is who I am under threat of punishment of perjury. It has to be mailed essentially to your residence on record. And you can change it if necessary, but then you have to jump through some more hoops. But basically, it's pretty much flat out, not foolproof by any stretch of the imaginations, but imaginations. Oh, anyways, this is what happens when you rush around last minute trying to get ready for a show. You will get the ballot. Again, I've described this before, but I'm going to describe it again. So in Illinois, the way it works is requesting a mail-in ballot is essentially the same thing as a absentee ballot. So you have to contact them, say, I want to get it. Then you have to prove who you are. Then they will do a check or whatever. And as soon as they approve you and the ballots are ready, they will mail it to you. And when they mail it to you, they contact you, say, hey, we mailed you the ballot. And then once you mail the ballot back in and they receive the ballot, they go, hey, we received your ballot. And then when they count your vote, they say, hey, we counted your vote. So it's kind of, it's not perfect, but there are some checks and balances along the way. So you know that if, hey, I got my ballot, wonderful, and I sent it back in, and you never get a confirmation saying, hey, we got your ballot, you can contact them. Obviously, you would have to wait a while, probably like 2 weeks, but you have that option. And there are some benefits to mail-in balloting in general, especially when it's done like that, because if you can do it and you can do it early enough, then it's gonna be there's gonna be ample time for your ballot to get in, and it's gonna have ample time to get processed and checked and counted, and that's a good thing for everyone. But really, people who want this mail-in balloting, for the most part, don't even understand why they want it. The reason why some states, not many states, but some states want this mass mail-in balloting is because they think it's going to be the only way that people are actually going to be able to vote, which A, is not true. In fact, even Dr. Fauci in a minute is going to tell you precisely that it is absolutely not true. But we'll get to that in a minute. I don't want to ruin that surprise. So the thing is with the mail-in balloting is some areas like California, their thought process is that they're just basically going to blanket mail ballots to every single person who is on the voter roll. Now, you think that would be a good thing because, well, the people who are registered to vote will get their ballots. The thing is, people who even aren't on that register happen to get ballots sometimes. In fact, some people will happen to get ballots 3, 4, 5 times. It happens. There's stories of that happening all across the country and have been for years. And again, this is not a gripe on anybody because this isn't done on a state or county level. So there's just mistakes happening all over the place. And that's what's making everyone so darn nervous about this whole mail-in balloting issue. In fact, just recently during the June primaries in Nevada, they had 250,000 mail-in ballots that were undeliverable. Now, mind you, when you think of Nevada, you think of Vegas, and you think this is going to be a highly populated state. It's not. I mean, there's still plenty of people there, but it's not nearly as populated as you think. So the fact that they had 250,000 ballots that they had printed up with names on them for their voter rolls, and they sent them to addresses, and either those addresses didn't exist, those people didn't exist, or there's just no way to deliver it or get it back to the post office. So that was 250,000 votes just in the primary. And this is something they were planning on doing. They had some time to plan for this. That's kind of a scary thought if you think about it, right? And that's kind of the problem that people worry about. I mean, you've heard the quote unquote anecdotal stories about some pollster, or not pollster, but judge, election judge, maybe in somewhere like Florida, will be found to have, a tub of votes found in his trunk. Things like that happen. And sometimes it's just by accident. Sometimes they didn't even realize they even had it. Who knows? I mean, I'm not saying that these people are doing anything, improperly on purpose. It's just the fact that it happens. And this is what's scaring so many people. And it should scare people because, let's face it, there are going to be a number of states that are going to be in play this year. And we don't even know at this point. I mean, we have hunches of what states are going to be in play. But, I mean, obviously there's going to be Wisconsin. There's going to be Michigan. There's going to be Pennsylvania, but there could be Florida. There could be Minnesota. There could be West Virginia. I mean, there could be a number of states in play. Nevada, Arizona, all these states could be in play. And it may only take one of these states to be turned. And you don't need to turn the whole state. You just need maybe a county, or a district to get turned. So that's the thing that people need to start thinking about when we start talking about this mail-in balloting issue. And again, I'm not saying it, and maybe some people are, I don't know, that, there's some diabolical plan to steal the election and do stuff. That's not the issue that at least I see. I just see the fact that we may not get an honest outcome because we don't know how to actually process a proper nationwide mail-in balloting. I'm sorry, if we had been prepared, if we had planned up for this last year, maybe we could have everything set up. And now that we're trying to do it last minute, it's not going to go well. In fact, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again probably 10 more times before the election. If you believe, even for a second, that we are going to find out on November 3rd who won the election, you're wrong. And it's just not going to happen. We're not going to find out the 4th. Probably not going to find out the 5th, or the 6th, or the 7th, or the 8th, or the 9th, or even the 10th. It easily could be 2 weeks. Easily. And that's low estimates. I mean, worst case scenario, I could see this taking to mid-December before we have an outcome between the lawyers and the lawsuits and the injunctions. I mean, think about this. They've already especially on the left, but both sides have done it, but especially on the left, they have already started being setting little seeds of doubt before we even have the election. So there are people like Hillary Clinton say, well, I wouldn't, no way in the world would I concede if I was Joe Biden that night. Because, of course, obviously, we're never going to know the true answers. And there's probably some truth to that because a lot of people will be casting their votes and sending them in like on the 2nd, on the 3rd itself. Because in many states, 22 states, in fact, including my state, you can mail in your ballot on election day, which means they won't get processed for at least a week, maybe even more. Who knows? Because like we've covered on this show before, yes, we are adding roughly 100, probably, we're assuming at this point, but in the upwards of 125, 150 million ballots. Now, of course, it's probably not all going to be mailed same day. Some are going to be mailed weeks ahead of time. But you're also going to have the ability to, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. So you're going to have the ability to mail them in for weeks ahead of time. But again, there's going to be so many done last minute. And we already move 471 million pieces of mail a day already. So when you throw on maybe 10 million pieces on the 3rd, and those are priority, it's going to make things a mess. Again, we're not going to know the outcome for quite some time. It's not going to be forever, but it will be for quite some time. And then, like I said, they're already planting seeds saying that, well, obviously it's going to look like Trump is going to win by a landslide on election night. But of course, we have all the mail-in ballots that will need to be counted. And once those mail-in ballots need to be counted or are finally counted, Joe Biden will clearly win, which probably is not true either, because no matter who wins this election, I can assure you it's probably going to be pretty close, probably within, 20, 30 electoral votes, maybe. So one state is probably going to swing this whole damn thing. And this is just, I don't know who you are. I don't know how much you like politics. I love politics. I've never missed an election. Not least not in the last few decades, a couple decades. I don't see myself on November 3rd. I'm just going to put like music or headphones on and music on and watch videos and movies and maybe Netflix and chill and just not think about the election because it's not going to go well. I can only imagine what people on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News even, and any network for that matter, are going to be doing. Is people are going to be calling states in the middle of the day saying, hey, look at Joe won this one. Let's call it's done. And then by 7 o'clock, Fox News will be like, oh, no, Trump won that same state. And then it's going to be back. It's going to be so ugly, and it's going to drive people insane. And these people, as you know, already insane. And between the lockdowns, COVID-19, losing your job, not having money to do anything, struggling to even eat or keep a roof over your head, these people are going to get angry, and people are going to get violent. And there are going to be bad things potentially happening on the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th and a week after. It's going to be terrible. I'm sorry, it is. It's just not going to be good. That being said, we are just blowing through our time here, people. So we're going to watch about a 3-minute video with Bill Barr and Wolf Blitzer. We'll do that right now. Blow this up so everyone can see it good.
This is, it's reckless. Well, this is a, sort of cheap talk to get around the fundamental problem, which is the bipartisan commission chaired by Jimmy Carter and James Baker said back in 2009 that mail-in voting is fraught with the risk of fraud and coercion.
But since then, there have been
until
a lot
this
of investigations that haven't proved it.
Let me talk.
Yeah, please.
And since that time, there have been, in the newspapers, in networks, academic studies saying it is open to fraud and coercion. The only time the narrative changed is after this administration came in. But elections that have been held with mail have found substantial fraud and coercion. For example, we indicted someone in Texas, 1,700 ballots collected from people who could vote. He made them out and voted for the person he wanted to. Okay?
Because
that kind of thing happens with mail-in ballots, and everyone knows that.
But there are individual cases. But as far as widespread fraud, we haven't seen that since.
Well, we haven't had the kind of widespread use of.
Okay, I'm going to stop that just for a second there, because what you just saw bothers the hell out of me. When you hear this excuse, well, we haven't seen widespread fraud. I just explained it to you a few minutes ago, but I didn't really hit on it, but I'm going to hit on it here. You don't need widespread fraud to steal or screw up or whatever an election, because all you need to do is influence one jurisdiction that will turn the tide in that one swing state, which will get you just enough votes to win. You don't need to influence and screw up this election or steal elections in every state. Just a couple, in just a couple areas of a couple states. So this anecdotal nonsense is just that, nonsense. You do not have to steal an entire state. You just need to steal, a few districts. Not, just a district, not even like a whole county. Just a few polling places can sometimes swing that area just enough to win. Just enough. You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed. Anyways, we'll continue.
Mail-in ballots is being proposed. We've had absentee ballots from people who request them from a specific address. Now what we're talking about is mailing them to everyone on the voter list when everyone knows those voter lists are inaccurate. People who should get them don't get them, which is what has been one of the major complaints in states that have tried this in municipal elections. And people who get them are not the right people. They're people who have replaced the previous occupant, and they can make them out. And sometimes multiple ballots come to the same address with a whole several generations of occupants. Do you think that's a way to run a vote?
Well, the only thing I'm saying is that so far we haven't seen widespread fraud. But
so far we haven't tried it. Well, and the point is,
but a lot of us. There are several states that only have mail-in voting, including a Republican state.
Well, this is playing with fire. This is playing with fire. We're a very closely divided country here. And if people have to have confidence in the results of the election and the legitimacy of the government, and people trying to change the rules to this methodology, which as a matter of logic is very open to fraud and coercion, is reckless and dangerous. And the people are playing with fire.
Well, I will point out there are 5 states that only have mail-in voting, including Utah and Colorado, Washington State, Oregon, Hawaii. And they've reported over the years they've had virtually no problems. But who's trying to change the rules right now?
I would say the people who want to go to mass mail-in ballots.
But you understand why. There is a coronavirus pandemic, right. And there are a lot of people.
And we're going to talk about that in just a minute.
Potentially, if they waited long lines when they go to the polls, they could get sick, especially older people or people with underlying conditions. As a result, a lot of people want to change the rules so they don't have to go wait in long lines. Well, they don't have to touch all this.
And the appropriate way to deal with that is, number one, arrangements at the polls that protect people, which can be done. And number two, people who have pre-existing conditions and are particularly vulnerable can get an absentee ballot. I have no problem with people. I voted by absentee ballot, not by mail. I actually went to the office to cast my vote. But absentee ballots are fine.
Exactly. Absentee ballot. Why won't this thing pause? I don't know what this thing is doing.
President Trump is...
Sorry about that. I have no idea what this thing is doing. It's possessed. I swear this thing is not working right today. So that is the point. And as Wolf Blitzer was making up, there are people who are going to have issues and problems when it comes to their health, and there are going to be concerns. You can have certain hours for polling in certain places, or certain polls where people will be a smaller number of people who have issues, or there's tons of early voting. Early voting goes on for weeks, and sometimes you might have 3 or 4 places in one city to vote in. I'm talking smaller cities, not Chicago, but just cities that have 50, 60, 70,000 people might have 3 or 4 early voting poll places. So that's a place you can do a lot of your voting. So there's a lot of options here. It's not just mass mail-in voting. And you can do absentee voting as well. We're going to show a couple of things here because we're going to run out of time. But here, so this is signed, sealed, undelivered. Thousands of mail-in ballots rejected for tardiness. So that is an issue. What states are going to allow your ballots to be counted late and which ones aren't? What cutoff you're going to have? Are you going to move up the cutoff? Are you going to leave it where it's at? How are you going to know? What if you get your stuff in the mailbox, but it's just not picked up to the next day and they decide not to count it, then your vote's not counted. I mean, there's going to be so many terrible, horrible issues coming up from this. Absolutely, 100%. Why the botched NYC primary has become the November nightmare. Nearly 6 weeks later. 6 weeks later for a primary in just one city. Large city, mind you, but just one city. 2 congressional races remain undecided 6 weeks after the election. And that's just in one city. We're talking about the President of the United States of America. And we're talking it could be January, literally, before we know. Who even knows how long this is going to take? I mean, I don't know how old you are. I'm old enough to remember 2000. Now, there was a hanging Chad issue, But the thing is, when you start going through these when there's going to be an issue or a conflict in a certain area, then you're going to have judges going through and manually checking every single ballot. And they're going to go through them. They're going to be like, well, I don't like the fact that this signature I don't think is legit. We're going to toss this one aside. And they'll make piles of questionable ones. And then they'll have to argue between judges. And then lawyers will have to get involved and go through it's real. It happens. It's happened before, and it's going to happen again. It's going to happen this time with this election. And it's going to be a nightmare, folks. Here's even Snopes. Did 28 million pieces mail-in ballots go missing in the last 4 elections? You know what their reply was? Mixed. Because it was part true and part not. Because yes, there are 28 million ballots that were missing, but it depends on why they were missing. Many were missing because they were undeliverable. But in 4 elections, 28 million votes were not unable to be casted because of their undeliverability. Again, like we talked about in Nevada, because they're going to send out these mass mail-in ballots based on voter rolls that are old and out of date. That's the problem. Here's on the Fulcrum. A pivotal batch of mail votes went missing. Fraud. Town is sorry. So, and here's one. Again, it's a small town issue, but small town issues happen. Again, pivotal little tiny areas inside one area or district, inside one swing state can make all the difference. And it's at a time when the hard-to-find intersection of mailed ballots and election fraud has become one of President Trump's obsessions. 202 envelopes in town's clerk vault in central Massachusetts may get an unexpected amount of attention. So the election was decided by 98 votes, yet they found 202 envelopes in the town clerk's vault. Okay? Things happen all the time. All the time. And again, I'm not saying anyone is being dubious. I'm not saying it's some mastermind conspiracy. I mean, it could be. I'm not saying it's not either, but I'm not ready to blame people for that yet. But what I am concerned with is that this is going to be messy. It's going to be ugly. And no matter who wins, no one is going to be happy. Well, except, I suppose the left will be happy if Biden wins eventually. But again, it's going to be a long, drawn out, painful, terrible. I mean, you see people who hear a rumor of the cops doing something bad to one person, an entire city gets torched. What's going to happen with this election? Can you imagine? Now, this is going to be an interview with Dr. Fauci. And it's only about a minute long, and I'm just going to play it. I just want you to listen to what he has to say. Fair? Fair.
Can people safely go out and vote in person, given that this year there is so much concern around the vote?
I think if carefully done according to the guidelines, there's no reason that I can see why that not be the case. For example, when you look at going to a grocery store now in many regions and counties and cities that are doing it correctly, they have X's every 6 or more feet. And it says, don't leave this spot until the person in front of you left their spot. And you can do that if you go and wear a mask, if you observe the physical distancing and don't have a crowded situation. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. I mean, obviously, if you're a person who is compromised physically or otherwise, or you don't want to take the chance, there's the situation of mail-in voting that is done for years in many places. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to vote in person or otherwise.
Now, this was a recent interview. So this is not from years ago. This is not something that's been crept up. This actually was from August 14th, this month. Dr. Fauci himself is saying there's no reason why the general public cannot do cannot do in-person voting. Now, again, you might have a reason. You might feel compromised. You might be concerned. There's going to be early voting stations all over the place. There's going to be absentee ballots where you can request them and do them. But to believe in any way, shape, or form that we need to go do this, that we need to have mail-in balloting for everyone is nonsense. Okay? It's just nonsense. I think I have one more video. I do. And actually, I'm going to tell you right now, I have not listened to this one, but I saw the headline and I thought, or the title on it, I thought it was kind of interesting. So I'm going to blow this up. It's only, again, 1 minute long. It's a different video. And we're going to find out together just what's in it. It's Dr. Fauci once again, being interviewed by somebody else.
I know you've got to go, but I've got a couple important things I want to ask you. One is that we haven't spoken about voting. And do you plan to vote in person, or are you planning to vote by mail-in ballot, or what's your thought on that? I'm a little I'd prefer to vote mail-in because I just don't want to be standing in a line somewhere worrying about the person behind and in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, I likely, Jeff, will vote in person, but under the circumstances that if what I see in grocery stores, what I see at Starbucks, what I see is you get 6 or more feet X, stand here and don't move until the person ahead of you. I believe that the polling stations are going to do that. If they do 6 feet, I wouldn't have any problem. But I absolutely understand people who have a concern about that, who should be able to vote by mail.
Oh,
So there you go. And once again, basically saying the same thing, but even he says he is going to mail, or he is going to vote in person. Now, again, not everybody needs to. And then there's going to be states that are not going to do it. And those states are going to have to do mail-in balloting, but they're going to have to be smart about it. They're going to have to get the ballots out early, very early. And I know there's a lot of people looking for attention. You'll see them on the radio, or you'll see them on some cable news network trying to, make a name for themselves, saying someone's going to steal this election. I mean, there could be people trying to do that, small groups, certain areas, and they might have some success in that, and people need to watch out for that. And if anyone sees anything, they should, definitely call their local authorities and let them say, hey, here's a guy dropping off 40 ballots. Might want to ask him why, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, I think the issue is just, we want everyone to be safe. So if you can do it in person, do it in person. If you can't, request a mail-in ballot, unless your state is planning doing mass ballots. But even then, try to do a mail-in ballot. Like I said, I always do a mail-in ballot. I shouldn't say always, but I have for the last 2 elections. And I'm going to do this election as well because I am a stay-at-home dad, and I can't take my little kids and wait in line for hours to do in-person voting. It just doesn't work. So I just simply request the ballot, and then I fill it out and I mail it in. Works just fine. And if you're in Illinois, I suggest you do the same thing. And if they do it in your state, request it as soon as you can, because as soon as that ballot's available, they're going to send it to you, and then you can take it and you can fill it out, mail it back in, and hopefully they'll have a system like ours where it'll notify you that they've got it and that they've counted it, and it's good. And if we do mail-in balloting, I hope the majority of it is like that. But of course, like I said the other night, it does kind of worry me as well, because there's some people who are on the fence, and they're not going to plan on doing any of these debates until the end of September, and then mid-October, and then towards the end of October. So most people are going to cast their votes at the latest hopefully by early October. So we'll see. I mean, it kind of makes me a little leery, makes me a little nervous, but what are you going to do, right? It is what it is. Now, if you were with us yesterday, or if you watched yesterday's show, which I recommend you do if you haven't done already, I promised, because I didn't have a happy ending. So again, if you're newer to the show or you haven't been here for a while, what the happy ending is simply a little video, a little snippet I find somewhere. Mostly been TikTok lately, but they could be, Instagram. They could just be on YouTube, just something, a little short video. Well, I found a doozy here, and it's really funny. Now, again, I'm going to warn you, this is parody. This is actually, I think, from The Onion. I don't know if you know what The Onion is, but I hope you do. It's funny. It's a funny group of people. They make up some funny stories and funny headlines. And this is actually from about 10 years ago, but it is hysterical. And the reason why I am going to play it is because, as we saw in that first video with Wolf Blitzer and Bill Barr, this is actually about Wolf Blitzer. And again, this is all in good fun, not good taste, but definitely good fun. It's a good one. So I hope you enjoy it. And then after it's done, we'll be out of here. So, oh my goodness. All right. See you guys later.
Talking about the incredible story of Molly, the 10-year-old girl who was raised by Wolf Blitzer.
That's right. Taken in as an infant, Molly then spent her whole life copying his language and behavior, becoming a kind of a half-human, half-Wolf Blitzer in the process.
Now, 3 months ago, Molly was taken into protective custody, and today she's here to share her story.
Yes, she is. Molly joins us in the studio this morning alongside Dr. Kenneth Ives, the developmental psychologist who is devoting himself to her case. Good morning to you both.
Thank you, Jim Haggerty, Tracy Gill. I really appreciate appreciate the chance to talk about my rather unique upbringing.
Now, Molly, you've been through so much. Are you doing okay?
Well, no question, Jim. It certainly is going to be difficult for me to re-enter society, so I am really looking forward to getting your perspective on the matter. Tracy Gill, co-host of Today Now, what's your take?
Well, I have to admit, it's a little hard to understand her.
Yeah.
Yes, the only way she knows how to communicate is through Wolf Blitzer's colorless monotone.
To me, always listing synonyms to words at the end of my sentences was just typical. Normal, par for the course.
We are currently trying to teach her more human-like speech patterns.
Right, well, it sounds like he really cared for you.
Well, Jim, I think it's open to debate if Wolf Blitzer has the ability to care for others. Per se, Dr. Ives might have some thoughts on that. But he's certainly protected.
From what Molly has told us, it appears Wolf Blitzer raised her as if she were no different than him. We know he fed her lattes and Altoids, taught her how to clean herself with a lint roller.
Amazing. You must be learning so much about the life of this extremely reticent anchor.
We're joined now by our chief international correspondent, Christiane Amanpour, standing by
No,
live
Molly,
in Toronto.
I think I've overwhelmed her a bit. She likes to be the one asking the
Christiane,
question.
what's it like on the ground
When
there?
Molly feels upset, she talks to her imaginary friend via satellite.
Okay, stay safe down there,
No, it's
Christiane.
sort of a coping mechanism.
Okay.
Well, it's just been so great to talk to
Jim
you both
Harrison,
this morning.
Tracy Gill. We hope to hear from them
no,
again very
Molly,
soon.
I'm
I guess we're done here.
Right.
Another breaching
Molly?
airport security.
Molly,
Are our
look at me.
skies safe? The eye-opening results of a new
Molly,
study.
stop it, Molly.
Congressional Republicans preparing
Molly,
for
remember,
a fight on
you are
Capitol
here.
Hill.
You
but
are
they
Molly.
going too far?
You
We'll hear from
are
both
Molly.
sides.
Oh, that's good.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ives and Molly. Make sure you look for Dr. Ives' fascinating new book about Molly. It's called Among the Wolf, and it's in bookstores right now.
A lot of networks report the news as it happens, but only one has the power to report the